Good evening. I'm Steve, and this is my Rock and Metal Life, and we're here for another On This Date presentation. And the time is 1984, January 22nd. The place is Lakeland, Florida. And I'm in town, I'm in Orlando because I just got sent there by the military. So I showed up in December, and I had actually been to a show already, uh, just not too long after landing there in December. But the big news for me, just earth shattering news, actually, if you be honest about it. Van Halen came out with their new record, and this was it. And there were songs on the radio. I heard Jump. There was no shortage of opinions as to what that was all about and if it was cool or not cool. Uh, but the day the cassette came out, I actually got that, and it was just like a powerhouse to me. Jump was fine, um, but then Panama, Top Jimmy, Hot for Teacher, all that stuff. It was just the other keyboard song, All Wait. I dug that. It was to me it was like more of a David Lee Roth vehicle, uh, but you got the greatest guitar player in history playing keyboard, so that's a real big deal. So anyway, the way all of this shook out, um, I was in a temporary assignment down there for 3 months while I was waiting for my school to open up in March. And I was in this building doing this silly job, checking people in and out that were coming and going from the base. And it was, low stress, kind of almost like not being in the military for a brief while. And one of the coworkers there that worked the overnight shift with me, um, he had a vehicle I did not, and I was telling him, man, I got to go to that Van Halen show. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I got to go. And he was like, I'll be your ride, no problem, let's go. And so myself and him, I think that was it, just the two of us, on Super Bowl Sunday, January 22nd. The Raiders are playing the Redskins in the Super Bowl over in Tampa. And our journey from Orlando to Lakeland, which was an hour outside of Orlando, that took us along I-4, which is basically going south and west, and it ends up over on the coast at Tampa. And we did see cars heading that way with, painted up with signs on them and stuff like that. Go Raiders, go Redskins. It's all good and fine. But and I was a big football fan, big Raiders fan at the time, but it was, Van Halen's in town. That's that supersedes anything in my world. So I'd seen him twice, and at this point in 1984, I am 18 years old, and my last couple of years in high school, I went to, I think it was 9 concerts, and two of those were Van Halen. The first one was on the Fair Warning tour. The second one was just a year later on Diver Down. And so here they come around again, and I'm in Florida, and it just so happens, I believe it was the third show of the tour. They had done 2 nights prior to this, and then they were showing up in Lakeland. So got me one of these, like not too long after showing up in Florida, either in December or January, whenever they went on sale. And it's another GA concert, and that's fantastic. I wish they still had them in the big venues, but they don't. So anyway, me and my buddy, we drove across Central Florida, and we got to Lakeland, and it was to be my first of, I think, 3 shows that I saw there. Later that year, I was only in Florida for less than a year. My school was like 6 months, and then I had this 3-month deal. So I was there from December of 83 to October. I'm sorry. Yeah. December of 83 to October of 84. And so I saw this one, and then I saw Priest in the same venue, and then I saw uh, Jefferson Starship just before we left. So I get my first look at Lakeland, and I like it. It's the proverbial heavy metal parking lot, and everybody's ready to go. It was just like that video that I made earlier about my first show ever uh, in Fresno, where I saw Van Halen on the Fair Warning tour. Just like that, the people are out and about. It's time to go. Tonight's the night. you know, and just couldn't be happier. Like it's Florida was like a situation where I almost felt like, um, you know, I had a little bit more. I was able to get out and about and do stuff more than in my previous commands, where I was like in these schools where we were all locked down, couldn't even wear our own clothes, for most of the time that I was in my previous places. But here in Florida, it's like it feels like I'm getting ready to, you know, life's not that bad, and there's beaches not far away and that kind of thing. So it's just a glorious day over in Lakeland. Show up in the parking lot, go in, you know, get down on the floor, and my two previous shows where I saw Van Halen, one I was up in the seats, um, and then the other one for Diver Down. It was in that small venue in Fresno, and it was just we were pretty close up, even though we were off to the side. So this one here, I really wanted to be up front, and did pretty well on that count. I got up to, between Roth and Edward, I was probably closer to Roth, but I don't know, maybe 10 people between me and the front of the stage. So it was the closest look I ever got of the band. And Autograph was the opener. And if I understand the history right, I know uh, one of the guys in Autograph basically like worked out, or was a runner in Pasadena and worked out with Roth, and so they went out on tour with them. And I don't believe they were signed yet. If I haven't read this in a while, but I don't think they were signed. I think they came out and they didn't have anything on the radio. And Van Halen was kind of famous for taking bands that were nobodies, and they used to say that they didn't want anybody in the audience watching the opening band. They wanted them up at the merch table, so that's why they had some odd openers over the years. Um, but when I go to a show, I don't ever miss any of the bands. So I watched Autograph, and they were pretty good. But it wasn't until a year later, I was out of Florida, and I'd already been shipped up to Idaho for another school when Turn Up the Radio came out and was such a big hit. So they were an unknown, and they played pretty good. They were good. Didn't know any of their stuff, obviously, but they were high energy and good guitar music. Singer was pretty charismatic, and I liked his voice, and it was all good and fine. But you know, the Super Bowl for me is when the headline act comes up there. So anyway, I'm pretty sure this is the best concert I ever been to. And over the years, I've had debates in my mind. And, there was a time that I thought a Scorpion show might have been the best. There was a time I thought that Dio on Sacred Heart might have been the best. There's videos out there. If you see any, there's one in particular I got bookmarked where Van Halen 1984 tour, the whole show is taped like from the beginning. And it's like with all the other Van Halen videos, for whatever reason, stuff from, it looks like they filmed it in the 1920s. It's not real clear and everything, but it's a wide view. You can pretty much see the whole screen, and you can get a feel for how dramatic it was, and how spectacular. And Roth was in absolute top form. And the way the show starts, and then they play the first song, and then when they play the second song, Roth comes out and slides across the stage. And it was to me, it was Van Halen at the height of their powers. And I don't want to debate, like say the previous records and the previous tour. I know there's, I've got all the bootlegs and stuff from the early years, and Ed's absolutely on fire and all that. What I'm talking about is, this was a spectacle, and we're used to all the video screens and lasers and fog and all that stuff these days. This in 1984, that band had you in the palm of their hand, and everybody obviously focuses on Dave and Ed. Michael Anthony's all over the place, and he's interacting with the fans. And if you didn't know already, you get a real good listen to how solid his voice is, how he can do the high parts and stuff like that. And so yeah, this is the closest I got to Edward Van Halen in all my years. I only saw Van Halen one more time after this, and it was the disastrous 2004 reunion with Hagar. And I still came away that night, thinking, I got to see my band, got to see my guys. Um, but this one right here, 1984 tour, they were, you know, they were so big. There was such a buzz about them. The record was so good. It just came out. It hadn't, I don't think everybody had heard all the songs like I had because I was playing it over and over. I knew, Drop Dead Legs, House of Pain. I had them all burned into my mind. But they had enough. They had, Jump and Panama were out there. I don't think Hot for Teacher got released until later. But, the talk about Ed playing keyboards, uh, I mean, it was a huge topic. And I remember just thinking, wow, it's crazy. It would be like if, like if the greatest basketball player of all time ended up quitting basketball and playing baseball for a couple of years, and then that happened. But I mean, I just remember thinking it was just so weird. Why would he do that? But the people liked it, and whatever the people inside the band's camp, whatever they thought going in, and whoever was for it and against it, um, you know, Edward was proven correct, and they were just so big at this point. And I was young enough, and I felt like I'm going to see him every tour. Nothing's going to stop me. And then I didn't see him again until 20 years later. But and part of that was because I was miffed that Roth left, and I followed Roth. I liked Eat 'Em and Smile better than 5150. I don't know if I would say that today, but at the time I definitely did. And I do remember when I finally got to my final assignment in the military, I was in San Diego, and they came on the OU 812 tour, and I didn't go. And I wish I had now, but at the time I was like, yeah, I seen him 3 times. I'm not on board with this Hagar stuff, and that it just sounds bizarre to hear those words come out of me now, because like over the years I really mellowed on the whole, why can't the guys in the band just get along? Well, that's not. I just don't feel that's for us to say. And if George Lynch absolutely hates Don Dokken, then that's just the way it is. And there isn't anything we can do. Shouldn't they do it for the fans? I don't think so. Especially when you get on the level where these guys are, and Roth was doing fine himself, but Edward was he built his own studio, and he was the band was called Van Halen. So I just those things play out the way they do. And sure, I wish it would be smooth sailing, and we didn't have different factions and this and that. But Van Halen proved ultimately to be big enough to support everything. It's kind of a surprise to me these days how the Hagar stuff. Because I remember when Hagar was in the band, I remember feeling weird that they were so successful and they just kept on rolling. And I kind of feel like they're doing it without me, which is, they're my favorite band. How can this be? But then, just not too many years after he left, it turned into this big thing of, Roth was the true singer. And I never liked that Hagar stuff anyway. Well, they sure sold a lot of records, and they sold out big arenas, and they had tons of success under Hagar. But at this point, January of '84, you don't know any of that's coming, and they were so on top of their game. And Roth comes out with the just cartoonish pro wrestling outfit, for the opener, and then throws it off little by little, and pretty soon he's down to like his basically his workout clothes or whatever that costume was that year. But just everything was so brilliant. And one thing that really sticks in my mind is I had not picked up a guitar at this point, and I still until I got to San Diego years later, and a bunch of guys on my ship, they all played guitar. I don't know what I thought about that. I thought it was like I don't know who can do that, but the average guy just walking around can't just pick up a guitar. Or I don't know what I thought. It was it just I never really thought about taking lessons or anything like that. Um, and I guess I thought that people like Ed or whomever, they figured out when they were 5 years old that this is what they do, and that's them and I'm me. But anyway, so I don't know how to play a guitar. I don't know how technical his stuff is. I know there's a bunch of people out there saying, "Oh, that's all flash. It's not. There's no substance." And I don't care because I know what my ears are telling me, and I know how it feels when I hear these songs. And he's a guy that his solos, his leads and all the fills and everything he does uh, during the rhythm parts and everything to me is just perfect. To my ears, it's just perfect. It's what I need. It's what I want. And so to watch him play up close is different than it is now, where I have an idea of what's going on up there, and I know, well, I could probably do that, or I have no shot of doing that, or unless I'm just going to lock myself in here and practice over and over. But anyway, so I'm watching him, and I remember thinking, for whatever reason, I thought Panama, that slow down part, I thought that was just like, that was so cool. He does this high flying solo, trademark Edward Van Halen solo, and then when it slows down, before Roth does the vocal, na 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 na, he does all that. He did that right in front of me. He was walking backwards, and he was like looking at either Ed or Roth, um, or he was looking at either Roth or Michael Anthony over there, and they were like interacting somehow. But he was walking backwards like without a thought, and he played that little part. And I remember thinking, I don't know how to play it, and I don't know what I thought it was going to look like, but I for some reason I thought it was kind of bizarre. He was doing uh, that part of the neck, and that it was, even for him, it was like so simple that he's like walking backwards, not paying attention apparently, and he's just playing it. And again, these thoughts today are, I understand what's going on, quite a bit more because I've been playing for all these years, and I'm not by any stretch comparable to that guy or anybody on that level. But I understand how he's played that a million times. He wrote it. He knows what he's doing, and he's the best. But I remember I was kind of like dazzled by that. I was like, golly, man, look at that, And then they, I remember the way the song ended with the music stops and they all say Panama, together, and Roth's like right above me, and big goofy smile and all that. So that's one of the great memories. But hey, just a killer night, one of the ones that rattles around my brain probably more than most shows, more than most of my Van Halen outings. Um, the first show I went to back, back home, I had to get a ride. I went with whomever. I can't even remember who all the people were involved in all those shows. Okay, now I'm out on my own. I don't live with my parents anymore. I'm in the military. And again, I don't have a car. I didn't have a car in Florida, but this guy, a right place, right time. He got me to the show. I'm out there. Uh, I kind of feel like I'm stepping out a little bit more. Uh, these concerts are more, you know, it's not like I got to get there by hook or by crook. It's just like, hey, man, I got money. I got money now. I can buy the tickets. And, I don't know if I would have took a taxi or whatever. I don't know how I was going to get there because a taxi would have been, like $1,000 or something. I don't know. But anyway, it just, it was good. I was in Florida, which is, the other side of the country from where I live. And Van Halen's here and I get to see him. And it was great. It was just a great, great experience. And, I'm just getting started on my concert experience. This is like number 10 or 11, something like that. But, more to come and more, I spent a lot of my time in the military seeing all my favorite people. The shows are going to really start picking up from this point forward because I saw a bunch of them there in Florida and then went to Idaho and I only saw one up there. And then I went to Washington next and I saw quite a few there. And these are all short stops, like less than a year. And then when I got to San Diego, it was like San Diego and LA, let's go. Show after show after show. So this is kind of the beginning of all that. great, great memories. I do believe it's the best show I ever saw.